I am concerned that when you have two guys running who, in fact, are going to spend combined over $1 billion going into Super Tuesday, that's never happened before.
People understand there is something wrong when we have a corrupt political system that allows billionaires to buy elections.
We can't just have a government that's run by and for billionaires and people who suck up to billionaires.
It's one of the most divisive issues in the 2020 Democratic primary, and it doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. Intense criticism of wealthy presidential contenders who some believe are trying to buy the nomination. Among those receiving criticism, billionaire businessman Tom Steyer, who's been gaining ground in the crucial South Carolina primary, and he joins us now. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Steyer.
Martha, it's great to be with you.
You have poured millions of dollars into ads in Nevada, more than $14 million into TV and radio in South Carolina, and are boasting the largest statewide operation of any other campaign there. You're saying you are ready to shock the world. Do you think you're going to win in those states?
I'm trying my heart out, and I think I'm going to do really well, Martha. But what you haven't mentioned is that I've spent more time in Nevada than any other candidate. And I've spent more time in South Carolina than any other candidate, even though I was the last candidate other than Michael Bloomberg to get in. I've actually been spending the time, and we have people on the ground in both states, from those states, actually going out, talking to people, organizing, listening, and coming up with a message that matters. That's really why I'm doing well in Nevada and South Carolina, is because I've put in the time, listened to the people, and I'm talking to their actual issues.
But let's talk about the money. You spent much more on ads than any candidate in Iowa and New Hampshire, and let me read the results of that. In Iowa, $16.4 million spent, 0% of the vote, 0 delegates. In New Hampshire, $19.8 million spent, 4% of the vote, 0 delegates. So why should primary voters expect a different outcome in Nevada and South Carolina, even though you have those organizations there?
I was the last person into this race, as I said. I wanted to compete in all the early primary states, but in fact, what we've seen is on the ground in Nevada and South Carolina, I'm doing really well, and that's what the polls say. What it also says is that I'm putting together a coalition of people, including specifically African Americans and Latinos, who are responding to a message that is inclusive, and I'm putting together the kind of coalition that we're going to have in November of 2020 to beat Donald Trump. So what we're seeing in these new two next states, both of which are dramatically more diverse than either Iowa or New Hampshire, is that my message actually is resonating. As I believe you said earlier in this program, I'm second with African Americans in South Carolina, and those numbers keep moving up. So when we actually think what we need to do in the fall, we need to beat Donald Trump. And one of the things we need to do is get the entire diverse coalition of Democrats to show up. I'm a grassroots person for the last 10 years. I've built one of the biggest grassroots organizations in the United States, Next Gen America. I've shown that I know how to get people to turn out. And I'm putting together that kind of coalition in Nevada and South Carolina, which is exactly the kind of coalition it's going to take to beat Donald Trump.
And you have been endorsed by a growing number of black leaders. I met some of them this week in South Carolina, as you said, but you still trail far behind Biden in South Carolina among black voters. And in the most recent national polls, you registered 0%, while Michael Bloomberg's support has really skyrocketed. You have said that the Democratic nominee has to have strong support among voters of color. So how can you win the nomination if you don't have that strong, diverse support that you say the nominee needs? I know you're getting some in South Carolina, but let's talk about nationally.
The way this has to work for me, Martha, is for me to show in Nevada that I can produce a great result. Take it to South Carolina, show I can produce a great result, and actually have some attention so people can learn who I am. I'm not a famous person, but I've been on the ground in Nevada and South Carolina, meeting people face to face and doing really well. And if I can show there that I can put together that coalition and take that with momentum into Super Tuesday with the kind of diverse coalition that I believe I'm building and that I believe I will show, then that will give me the momentum and people will have to look at me as a serious candidate, because the real question here is who can beat Donald Trump? And the two things we're going to need to do is take him on the economy. And my background says, my 30 years in business says I can show where he's lying, which is every time he opens his mouth on the economy, and that I can put together the kind of diverse coalition. This will be a turnout election. The question is, will the Democratic coalition turn out? And my answer is going to be, I can show I can produce that.
Mr. Steyer, you say that you can take on Donald Trump on the economy. But the latest Quinnipiac national poll, again released just this week, says 70% of voters describe the nation's economy as excellent or good. So how do you convince them that a change is needed when they think they're doing so well under Donald Trump?
I think if you take a look at what he says, everything he says superficially sounds right, but is actually a lie. So when he says the economy is growing, I can show that, in fact, all the money's going to rich people. When he says unemployment is low, which is true, I can show that the wages people are getting don't support a family. And when he says that the stock market is up, these are his three big statistics. It's largely because of the huge tax break he gave to big corporations, but it also doesn't matter that much because most of the stocks, 85% of the stocks, are held by the top 10% of 10.
But I want to go back to that 70% number. You talk about the wealthy. They're not all wealthy people. 70% say the economy is good and they're doing well.
Well, I'm just saying, here we are on a show, and you're standing up for Mr. Trump's version of the economy. And I'm telling you,
I'm telling you about a national poll. I'm not standing up for anybody. I'm telling you about a national poll.
And what I'm saying is this. There is a different story of this economy and this country that has to be told. Mr. Trump has to be faced down about what he's saying on the economy because he is running on the economy. That's exactly what he's going to say. He's going to say, I'm great on the economy and Democrats stink.
So how do you
I can take him on that because it has to be shown that this economy actually isn't working for the vast bulk of Americans. And this president is dangerous to them in terms of money and in terms of health care and in terms of retirement.
How do you convince them that you can do a better job? How do you convince them that you can do a better job than the other billionaire, Michael Bloomberg?
Well, I have a very specific set of proposals here, Martha. One is I am promising and can easily deliver a 10% tax cut to everybody in America who makes less than $250,000. Two, I'm saying I'm going to declare a state of emergency on climate on the first day, and that actually rebuilding this country will produce over 4.5 million good-paying union jobs every year for as far as the eye can see.
And Mr. Steyer, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. And third of all, we're talking about a wage structure here that has actually gone down over the last 40 years, and that raising the minimum wage and getting living wages for working Americans is something that's absolutely critical, and we need to stand up for unions, and we need to stand up for the right of working people to bargain collectively, to come together, and to basically fight back against a war on the working people of this country that started with Ronald Reagan and has continued right through to Mr. Trump.
Mr. Steyer, we're just running out of time here. Mr. Steyer, we're running out of time here, and I want you to address the criticism about the amount of money you've spent on the campaign. Elizabeth Warren has called it wrong, and it is not the way a democracy should work.
Well, Martha, if you know my history, you know that what I've done in every single instance, including starting need to impeach, but including going after the climate crisis and fighting corporations successfully for a decade, when I've seen a huge problem in the United States, I've put in all my heart and soul and money to try and solve it. I see a huge problem here. I got into the race late because I was worried that no one was going to take on Mr. Trump the way he needed to be beaten. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. I am putting my heart and soul and money behind the idea that we need to take back this country from the corporations that have bought it, that we need to deal directly with our climate crisis, and we need to deliver social and racial justice across the board. That's what I'm fighting for. I'm giving it everything I have, and that's what I've always done.
Okay, Tom Steyer, thank you for joining us this morning.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.